Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This guy over here is Tim, and welcome back to Second Legacy. If this is your first time, we would love to have you help the channel grow. Second Legacy is a joint operation between Tim and I. You may have seen us on our own channels, Military Arms Channel over there and Langley Outdoors here, but Second Legacy is a joint operation, as I mentioned, to help pass the blessing of the Second Amendment along to the next generation. We can dive deeper through longer form content and really provide information and context to help you with that next conversation for your nearest gun control or tending to be gun control, either family member, employee, or just peer. Now, what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to be fair with you guys. This is next level crazy. We're going to take a trip above the border to Canada. Now, the stuff that I'm about to introduce, I'm going to introduce it and just show you what's happening. Then Tim and I are going to dive in and break this down because imagine yourself in what I'm about to read. So, Mr. Producer, if you could hit number 1, and then we'll just hit them real quick. Canadian man charged with second-degree murder after shooting armed home invader with legally owned gun. Now, if that topic line or the headline doesn't set you in enough of a fury, wait until you read the details. Again, put yourself in this scenario, and then we'll break it down. Mr. Producer, we go to number 2 real quick. A man from Milton, Ontario, in Canada, has been charged with second-degree murder after shooting a man who was trying to rob his home as part of a 5-man home invasion, according to the Toronto Star. One intruder was pronounced dead after being shot, and one more was arrested, while the remaining 3 are still at large. So far, we've got a home invasion, 5 criminals, 1 person at home, and somehow the guy at home is going to prison. It gets crazier. Mr. Producer, number 3, at approximately 5 a.m., so 5 in the morning, the suspects went to the house with the intent to commit robbery, according to police. The group was confronted by a man charged with a murder offense, Ali Mian, 22, and multiple gunshots were fired inside the home. Number 4, sir. The intruder, who was shot and killed, has not been identified by police. However, one of the alleged home invaders has been identified as Romario Clark, 20, and charged with breaking and entering and unauthorized possession of a firearm. So just to set this over, and then I'm going to throw it to Tim before my head pops off my shoulders. You're talking about 5 a.m. Put yourself in this scenario. You've got your family at home. 5 individuals break into your home to break and enter and rob you with an illegal firearm in Canadian law. You defend yourself and your family member. You go to prison for second-degree murder, and the people who were coming into your home, 5 of them, 1 of them gets shot. The other gets charged with breaking and entering and illegal possession of a firearm while you have second-degree murder. Tim, you got to take this from me because my head's going to explode.
So I think most Americans would take a look at this and just go, how is this even possible? Now, in our pre-show conversation, I was talking about how the position of anti-gunners in the United States has kind of shifted over the years. So I remember them making arguments decades ago about equal force, right? So the argument was, well, okay, we can't really say that you can't defend yourself, but what we're saying is you have to use equal force. So if somebody comes at you with a pointed stick, you can only use a pointed stick in return. You can't use a firearm because it's not equal force. You have the advantage and it's not a fair fight, as if when you're in a fight for your life, fairness comes into play, right? It's something you should consider, like, I'm not going to cheat here. I'm just going to go ahead and go find myself a pointed stick. So to many of us, of course, well, the Second Amendment community pushed back against that, but the anti-gunners in the United States have gone even further down that rabbit hole to where they stand currently, where is pretty much what the Canadians have under their current legal system. And that's basically, no, you know what? Self-defense just isn't right. I mean, how many times have we seen people say silly things like, well, why didn't the police shoot that gunman in the leg? Did they really have to kill him? It's the anti-gunners have this skewed vision of reality. And I don't think those people that hold those views understand or have ever been in a life, threatening and situation where their lives literally hung in the balance. And so, man, I don't understand that whole mentality of you don't really have a right to self-defense. You can't use a gun. You just can't. I mean, guarantee you, if this guy had used a ball bat against this perpetrator with a gun, he would still face criminal charges in Canada.
Absolutely.
And that's what we've seen in many of these anti-gun countries. So you're telling me, Canadian government, that my life has no value, that I'm supposed to just roll over and accept the will of an armed criminal coming into my house at 5 a.m, threatening my life, my mother's life. This person's mother was at home. I believe his mother actually owns the home. And I'm just supposed to lay down my life because it would just be morally wrong for me to defend my life and use deadly force against somebody with a firearm breaking into my house at 5 o'clock. I can't wrap my mind around that as an American.
No, not at all.
I just can't.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, I don't honestly, I don't think a lot of people watching this show right now can wrap their head around it because it defies natural logic. Someone is attacking you or someone that you care about in your environment. They came into your house and somehow you're supposed to go, you got me. That third lock didn't quite work like I expected, but next time you won't see the fourth one. It's just it doesn't make sense. Like even a child, even an animal understands that the way to stop something from attacking you is to be able to defend yourself. I mean, it's the most base understanding of self-preservation that governments are actually requesting you just let go off to the wayside. All the while, like I'm going to go on a tangent if I'm not careful. All the while, this is the same government saying, don't worry, handguns are illegal in Canada. C-21 is going to get those things out of here. And the criminal was carrying an illegal firearm. But you can't talk about that. You have to talk about the fact that you defended yourself, which, by the way, the gun of the homeowner was legal and licensed according to Canadian law. He's still wrong. He's still going to at least be charged for second-degree murder. It on so many levels, this doesn't make sense. And to Tim's point, this is not just Canadian law. This is perspective in the United States as well. You've got multiple states in the Northeast particularly who have something called duty to retreat. Mm-hmm. Well, the duty to retreat is this exact same principle. You're going to be charged. You're going to go to court because you got to prove to somebody that could you make it to that window? Yeah. Could you run in and get your family member and maybe make it out that window? Did you have to do it? I mean, after all, it's just things we're talking about here. When in the reality is you aren't in that situation. Your adrenaline is not pumping. If you're going to realize that someone's going to harm you or your family, do you really want to have to make the determination, can I make it to that window? Can I grab my one kid? Maybe my wife can make it out the other window. It defies logic, Tim.
Yeah. Grab a heavy object, throw it across the room, distract the intruder, and sneak out the back like in a movie. It makes no sense. And I think this is a perfect time to play the video of the Prime Minister of Canada talking about Canadians and their not right of self-defense. Mr. Producer, if you play that clip for us.
There are debates, and we have a culture where the difference is guns can be used for hunting or for sport shooting in Canada, and there's lots of gun owners, and they're mostly law-respecting and law-abiding. But you can't use a gun for self-protection in Canada. That's not a right that you have in the Constitution or anywhere else. If you try and buy a gun and say it's for self-protection, no, you don't get that. You get it for hunting. You can get it for sport shooting. You can take it to the range, no problem, as long as you go through our rigorous background checks. But there's a difference around the culture. And one of the things that we're seeing with the debate in the States is you get more and more of the American style, right to carry, self-defense arguments filtering up through the usual more right-wing communications channels.
Yeah.
So, wow. Well, it's good to know that our culture of self-defense is permeating the Canadian discussion a little bit there. But
can't stop the freedom, baby.
Yeah, we're exporting freedom a little bit. But where do you even start with this? But in watching that clip again, I think I may have found a possible defense for this homeowner. Maybe he just argues he was just hunting the people that were stalking him in his living room. Or you could argue that it was sport shooting. I wasn't shooting at him. I was just kind of viewing him as a paper target. I mean, that probably wouldn't work.
But no, it probably wouldn't work. It wouldn't work in Canada. It wouldn't work on YouTube. There's so many things that wouldn't work on.
Yeah.
But it's just, to your point though, this is why we're covering this. Like, kind of zoom out a little bit. When you're talking about the gun rights in this country, it is a blessing to have the Second Amendment. The fact that the government is restricted from infringing upon your rights. They still try, which is the whole point of our entire movement. But we're defending them. We are defeating them in their movements. Imagine if we didn't have the Second Amendment. Imagine if the entire country, because it's only really about 9 locations in the United States that have heavy population centers that employ these types of extreme gun control measures. But again, it's still part of the United States. You aren't going to have the same conversation in Oklahoma. You're not going to have the same conversation in Florida. You're not going to have any of these conversations because the inverse to the duty to retreat laws from the far left and the Northeast are stand your ground laws. The idea that you even have to have a stand your ground law to protect yourself, that alone is questionable. But it's response to the duty to retreat stuff. Make no mistake, the exact same things that you're hearing from the Canadian Prime Minister, from the same things that you're hearing from Biden when he's blasting his rhetoric, this is the type of control that they want. The fact that they can't do this is a thorn in the side to gun control politicians who wish they had Canadian power in the United States.
And another thing, and I don't know if this is true in Canada, so if you know, if you're a Canadian viewer, if you're just familiar with Canadian laws, please comment down below. But in the United States, our Supreme Court has held that the police have no legal obligation to protect you. So if you're finding yourself in that situation, 5 a.m., 5 armed gunmen come into your home, you dial 911, and the police don't show up for 45 minutes, you can't go and sue the police department because they have no obligation to protect you. So you are, I don't care where you live, what country you're a citizen of, in my view, you are the first responder. When bad things happen and you have seconds to respond, you're that first responder. You can't rely on somebody else to save your bacon. So watching that clip from Trudeau talking about, well, in Canada, we have a culture of hunting and sport shooting, but we don't have a culture of self-defense. That is an alienable right. That is something that you're born with, the right to life and liberty, right? And the fact that somebody would be there to deprive you of that life and liberty violently, and the state comes back and says, yeah, you should have tried to escape out that back window. You should have tried to distract them. You should have tried to talk them down. You know, to me, that's just mind-numbing to see the prime minister of a country stand there or sit there in this case and say, you just don't have a right to self-defense. You can use your guns for fun things, but, you know, the more serious things like defending your life and the life of your family, not so much. You know, we're going to go ahead and put you in prison for doing something like that. I can't wrap my mind around it.
Right. And again, I don't think any of us can, to be quite honest with you, because I mean, if you put yourself, what I said at the very beginning of this video, if you're watching this, put yourself in that same scenario. I mean, like, that is so just, it's so powerful to just be in the position where you think about that, but much less being in that situation. And then having to go on trial because did you have the duty to retreat? Did you really do everything you could to run away? It doesn't make sense because on the other side, you don't know if there's more bad guys outside the window. There are so many reasons why this is a terrible idea, but the important part is when we're looking to the north and we're seeing Canada and we're seeing all the rules they're putting in place, the things the prime minister is saying, case in points like this is a perfect example to get a preview of what it would be like if we did not have the freedoms that we have, if we did not have the representatives that actually represented our wishes in Congress to curtail this kind of crap. Because quite honestly, that's the big difference. And the same thing that the left will berate our country and say, we are terrible for this, terrible for that. We're the worst thing that's ever happened. 200 years ago, this happened, so therefore everyone now is evil too. It doesn't make sense. They are trying to tear us apart because they want the ultimate control. And the Constitution is the one document in the entire planet that is curtailing this level of control from governments against their own people.
Absolutely true. And I think most of our viewers would agree with us. But, you know, it's still an important conversation to have because, like you said, there are many states out there that do have the duty to retreat laws and things like that, even though they have concealed carry in those states, because all 50 states have some form of concealed carry now. And it's just, you know, it's just unbelievable. And I can't believe that that mentality finds places to foster and survive in the United States, because historically we've had a culture where the Canadian culture is just hunting and sport shooting, apparently. Our culture is quite different. Our culture is that we have, as individuals, a right to survive, to live, to go about our lives unmolested. And if somebody threatens us with death or serious bodily harm, we have a right under our Constitution to respond with whatever force is necessary to end that threat, up to and including the use of deadly force. So with that being said, I look forward to the comments down below. If you guys, have a different perspective on what's going on in Canada, Trudeau's comments, and the case that we're talking about, please comment down below, because I'd like to read those comments. Who knows? Perhaps it would be, fodder for a future conversation between Braden and I. And yeah, it's certainly very, very interesting. If you guys would like to support us, that would be awesome. You can do that by subscribing to the channel. You can do that by hitting the little thanks button underneath the video player you're watching right now, and helping us to bring this message to our audience, which is global, but our message of American style freedom that the Canadians seem to be so scared of, bringing that to a global audience. And we can only do that through your support. So please do support us, and please do like, share, and subscribe our videos. And we will talk to you guys soon.